Welcome back to another video, and in this one we're going to talk about all things bushcraft tools. So thank you guys for joining me here once again out in the woods. Now, I put out a poll on my Instagram stories a couple of days ago to find out what you wanted for this week's video, and the votes came in as most people wanting to learn about my bushcraft tools. The other option, of course, was my hiking kit, which I will do a video on in the future. But for today we're going to talk about bushcraft tools. So I've got pretty much all of my bushcraft tools here with me, the tools that I use out in the woods. We're going to talk through them. We're going to break it down into the categories of axes, saws, knives and miscellaneous, and run through that. Stay tuned to the end to find out where I actually am. So let's start off with probably one of the most exciting bits, and that is knives. So obviously we're going to start with the one that you have seen most. So this is my TBS bore bushcraft knife from the Bushcraft store. I got this at the Bushcraft show last year or the year before, one of the two. This is my go-to knife. Comes in a very nice leather sheath. The model that I got comes with a fire steel holder, but I have removed that and slimmed that down. I have popped a red lanyard onto the knife here so that it is easier to find. And I have, a lot of people might ask what this thing on the belt loop is. That is just a little paracord modification that I made. I found that this knife sat very low on the belt, hang down a lot and swung about. I'm not a fan of that. I'm not a fan of danglers and things like this. So by tying that on here, it raises it up a little bit and tightens it on my belt so it doesn't move as much. It's got a brass stud pop opening, taking the knife out. The knife itself is about 4 inches long, I believe. It has a Scandi grind. It is K720 high carbon steel. It's got a drop point blade. It comes super sharp. It still is super sharp, really quite easy to sharpen with it being that carbon steel. But as you can see, it is quite dirty. It needs a good clean here because high carbon steel is prone to rusting, but this is actually mostly just dirt because it's quite dirty. I got mine with the dark walnut handles, and of course they all come with the red scales, or not the red scales, but the red scale liners. You've got quite a thick blade there, and it has a sharpened-ish spine, so you can go ahead and strike a fire steel with it. It's got a decent point to it. You can choke right up on the blade if you need to do fine work. It's quite weighty. It's quite a weighty knife. But it balances well. It's with that weight you can be chopping little branches off and things like that, and it works really nicely. In my opinion, the TBS knives in general, whether that be the boar or the timber wolf, they're all really good quality and really great value for money. In terms of where this knife fits into my bushcrafty adventures, this is my go-to knife. This is the knife that is basically always on my belt when I'm out in the woods. I love this knife. It's multi-purpose. I can even do things like cooking with it and stuff, you know, chopping up vegetables and stuff. Although I must be honest, cutting vegetables with a Scandi grind can be quite challenging. Not much more to the sheath here to have a look at this. The cutouts here in the side are for the attachments that you can get, whether that be the ferrous cerium rod one or the DC4 or CD4 sharpening stone and ferro rod connectors, which come at an extra cost. This is probably 2-3 mil thick leather, so it's nice and sturdy. Never had a problem with it. So that is my go-to knife. Continuing with the knife theme, we have my old primary knife, which is this one. This is by Hela, or Hella, or however it's pronounced. It's a Scandinavian company that do also produce really high quality knives for not too bad of a price. This one, this was my first ever Bushcrafty knife. So again, we've got that Scandi grind. This one's only about 3 to 3.5 inches long. Again, we've got a dark walnut handle. This one, however, is in stainless steel, and that is why it is in such shiny condition. This one's not overly sharp, it needs a good sharpen. I very rarely use this knife anymore. This has kind of become my... If I'm going to be doing a lot of food work, or like the main purpose of the event that I'm doing is going to be relating to food, then this would be my food prep knife. As we can also see, it has got that metal guard there, and if we compare it to the TBS bore, we can see the difference there instantly, both in terms of length, thickness, but also the fact that the TBS bore is a full tang, whereas the Hela here, I don't know the model name, is, I believe, stick tang. I'm not certain on that, so it is not as strong. I would not do heavy brute work with this. But it is really quite a nice knife, certainly good quality, and Hela have brought out a little bit more recently knives similar to this level. So in terms of the sheath with this one, it's not as good quality. It is this green, which is interesting. Again, we've got that brass stud there, like popper. The belt carry system on this one's not near as good. It's just a really thin, flimsy bit. This knife moves a lot on your belt, but it's not actually that bad quality. It's not broken. It's not done anything like that. So fair dues to them. Pretty sure this is a slightly cheaper knife anyway. So as a starter knife, pretty good. Moving on, we've got my pocket carry knife here. This is the Gerber Bear Grylls folding version survival knife. There is also a fixed full tang version of this. A lot of people hate this knife, and for a survival knife, well, for a bushcraft knife, they are quite useless. The serrations that are on the first kind of 2 centimeters of the blade there basically mean it's impossible to sharpen, and it isn't very good for the woods. One thing I do want to eventually do to that is take a file and create a new bevel, so it is just a single thing. But in terms of a pocket carry, this works for me, works for cutting paracord and things like that, which is actually kind of what I use it most for. It's a folding knife, but it is locking, so it is still illegal here to carry in the UK without a valid reason. It's got a decent pocket carry clip on it, although that does seem to bend quite a lot. We've got a lanyard hole in the top end. Yeah, this will still strike a fire steel, but not as well. As will the Hela, by that way. The Hela will also strike a fire steel. But in terms of a pocket carry, that works. So that lives in my pocket. So continuing with the knife theme, but kind of straying away from your traditional knives, we have these two TBS knives here. Well, they're not TBS, they are in fact Mora. They are Mora carving knives. So, but they were bought from the Bushcraft store, so they have TBS leather sheaths. So these are very similar to one another. The sheaths themselves is just a simple bit of leather with a fold over and another stud there to close it. The first one here, these are both crook knives, so the first one here is the kind of gentle curve, I don't know the technical term there. These are made by Mora Knife. These are incredibly sharp, made in Sweden, stainless steel. These are incredibly sharp. I actually just nicked myself there on the edge. These are double-edged, so there is actually a sharp edge on both sides, which does make them a little bit difficult to use. You can't push against with your thumb. And if I'm going to be using these, I'm going to be wearing my leather gloves. because these are really quite dangerous. Although I'm not entirely certain on how to sharpen these yet, but as of yet I don't need to. They've got a really nice, I don't actually know the wood, possibly birch handle. They are easy to grip, but also not, nothing really fancy to it. And again, you can actually see in the end, the end of the tang there, it's like a needle tang or whatever. But yeah, that's number one. And number two here, which is actually the one I've used more. I've not really used that other one because I've not found what that one does that this one doesn't. This is the full crook. It's kind of like a question mark shape there. And again, for spoon carving, this is my go-to. All of my recent spoons have been done with this. Again, same thing. Super sharp stainless steel blade with a stick tang and a birch handle. And again, double-edged, so slightly more harder. You can get single-edged ones, but it's harder, but it can also come in handy when you're doing push, you don't have to swap to your left hand to do the opposite cut, basically. Yeah. Moving on to saws. So the first saw here, you've seen it lots of times, is my Bahco Laplander folding saw. These are, in my opinion, the best value for money saw on the market. They are super good, especially for beginners. They have an incredibly forgiving blade that will bend. I've yet to hear of anyone being able to snap these accidentally. I imagine you could if you did it intentionally. Compared to the other version of a saw similar to this, the silky saw, being very easy to snap because it's not a mild steel, it's like a stainless steel. This is a mild steel here, super flexible. You've got that simple button lock method on the side there, so you just press the button and fold it. And unlike the silkies, it locks in the way. So the silky does not lock in the way, and they have that kind of button lock on the top, which I'm not really a fan of, because the issue, I've personally not used the silky, but from my opinion and just thinking about it, I don't like the idea of that, because the benefit of this button lock is the variety of positions in which you can hold this saw. So you can hold it in the kind of standard position there. You can shuffle back and kind of hold it a bit wobbly on the end, but you can still do it, and if you need to reach up higher or things like that. But you can also come right up close and do really fine work with this. So this is really good for carving. It has got a bit of a non-stick coating on it, which kind of helps it not bind in wood, but I've not really noticed much. And as you can see, it does start to wear off. The teeth on this are super sharp. They come super sharp, they stay super sharp. This is still a really sharp saw. And probably most of my cuts that I've had from doing bushcraft, including things like the rip in my trousers here, is from this saw. And something that I learned recently is that these saw, the Bahco Laplanders do a really good job at cutting bone. I learned this off a video. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that is the case, because the Bahco was specifically designed as a hunting saw. So not only does the teeth work really well on wood, they do a really quite good job at cutting bone. So if you are hunting and things like that, might come in handy. Because of the similar reason to the TBS bore knife, I have put a brightly coloured lanyard on it, because the Laplander is this green, which blends in really well with the ground. You can now get orange and blue, I believe, coloured Laplanders. Now in my opinion they look rubbish, but when it comes to if you're running courses and stuff, especially with children, that might be a better option. In terms of carrying my Laplander, it normally lives in my pocket on my trousers when I'm out, but as I've talked about before, I've got this Journeyman Handcrafts leather sheath. This is really lovely quality, but I'm not going to go into too much detail because we're talking about the tools here, and this sheath here is a separate item. Saw number 2, I've not really used much in a very long time, but this was my first saw. You may recognise the design a little bit from the Agua Canyon Boreal saws, but this is a Gerber saw. I actually don't know the model name, never have. So this starts in a bit of a rod shape and unfolds to create a very small, mind you, but still to create a bow saw or buck saw. And you just use that little hook there. In my opinion, the Agua Canyon ones are designed better, but do come in at a much larger cost. Originally, the Agua Canyon saws, which I don't own one as of yet, it's something that's on my list to be purchased. Originally, they only came in a size of a 21-inch. They now come in, I believe, this size, the 21, and then a 24. I believe this is a 19-inch. But I might be wrong, or 14-inch, something like that. It's got a rubberized handle, so it's quite comfortable, but of course the metal of this does get very cold. They've done what they can by cutting out this design to lighten the weight, but it is quite hefty. The blade is stainless steel, I believe, as most saw blades are, and it has a very particular saw blade pattern here of 4 points and then a V kind of tooth. That is because this is, I believe, an all-purpose blade. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but this is an all-purpose blade. But I've actually found that this thing cuts really badly. I actually find that the Laplander cuts through wood quicker than this does, even if I'm cutting massive logs, such as, you know, for making benches and things. But I am just like the Agua Canyons, you can get kind of replacement blades in different formats. So, you know, dry wood blades, green wood blades, and multi-purpose blades. I very rarely use this saw nowadays, to be honest. It's heavy, it's cumbersome. The pack size is not too bad for what it is, but I just find that the Laplander cuts better and is smaller. But I am going to look at getting an Agua Canyon saw for doing larger work. Now, the final saw isn't really a saw, it's a saw blade. So I don't carry a spare saw blade with me, usually. I'm not going to unwrap this. This is just a kind of standard Baco bow saw blade, wrapped in some duct tape here to stop it from cutting through things. I don't typically carry a spare blade, but of course there is the technique where you can use a saw blade and create your own buck saw in the woods, and that is maybe something that I'm going to do while I'm out here today. If I do, I'll throw some B-roll up. Otherwise, spare saw blade, you can carry it on a pack like this. It's too big to actually fit in the pack, and in fact it's wider than the pack itself, so strapping it to the bottom was a bit weird to get it out here. But if you're carrying like a larger rucksack, of course it could slip down the inside. And there are companies that sell Velcro kind of sleeves that you can carry saw blades in. And of course you could just use it as the blade itself. Moving on to maybe what a lot of people would be excited about is axes. Now we're going to talk about the bowring one first. So this axe here I've had for a number of years now. This was my first axe, this was my original axe. As you can see, it doesn't have an actual sheath. It came with a very, very flimsy pleather, fake leather sheath that broke. So I've replaced that with some Hessian. It works fine to stop it cutting through. And as we can see, this is your bog standard, like, hardware store axe. It originally had an orange bit down here on the handle, but I scraped that off to make it look a bit better, and I've added this paracord overstrike guard. To be honest, it's a pretty bad axe. if you want to do anything but splitting. If you can get them sharp, which you can, they're relatively easy to sharpen these. They're good for splitting because they've got that splitting head. They've got quite a wide head. Not to the level of a maul, but, you know, it's designed to split. Anything else, they're useless if you want to put points on things and stuff. They just don't do a good job. They just tend to bounce, and I have found that this does not hold a very good weight. This one didn't come with a lanyard hole. I drilled a lanyard hole in it so I could put a lanyard on it. If anything, I mostly use this as a hammer most of the time. Axe number 2, the one that is exciting and that I have talked about a lot recently, is this. This is the Gransfjord's Brooks Small Forest Axe, but this is the Raymir's Bushcraft edition. Got this off the Raymir's Bushcraft store, and this is by far my favourite Bushcraft tool. I absolutely love this axe. To start with, Gransfjord's axes come with a simple but sufficient axe mask. I want to clarify that real quick, by the way. That is a sheath for knives and saws, but on an axe it is a mask. So this is actual leather here that's been kind of press studded together or whatever. That is super nice, but it does, you know, it is flimsy, but it does a job. The axe head, as you can see, if we compare it to the cheap axe, you can see it's a much thinner axe head. It will still split actually really well. Splits really good. Works better for especially doing things like the hand split method and things like that. But it will also, I've done some carving with this, and of course I've done some felling. It's a little bit on the short side for large scale felling, but for small felling, for things like this, it works okay. Still razor sharp, and I have yet to sharpen this. That is still from the factory. It has got a very nice, I believe, hickory handle, but I might be wrong on that. It has got the lanyard hole, although I've not put a lanyard on it because with an axe this size I don't really need the lanyard. It is a, I actually don't know the steel type for this, and one of the things that I very much like about Gransfjord's is it's all handmade. So these axe heads are hand forged. So on here I have the WE stamp there. That is the initials of the person who made this axe. So I could link it all the way back to them. So that is really cool. You've also got the Gransfjord's Brooks stamps on there as well. This is just a very, very functional tool. It does a very nice job. They are pricey, but at the end of the day, they're worth it. If you're only going to be doing small scale work, I would recommend you just look at something like the Gransfjord's Brooks or Hultafor's like wildlife hatchet and hatchet sized axes. They're about this size. That would be more than enough, but I wanted a larger axe, and of course you can scale up even further to things like the Scandinavian forest axe and the American felling axe, but I do love that axe. So, for our miscellaneous section, I'm going to be talking about one item. And I'm going to be talking about a pair of binoculars. Now, these are a cheap pair of binoculars. I want to set that off to start with. You're looking at a similar price point. I don't know the actual price point of these ones from Kylie Tech here. But I will link up here and in the description to a video by Forrester Bushcraft looking at a pair of Go Sky binoculars. They are basically the same as these, and these are about the same kind of range in terms of price, but these do an incredible job. These are a really good pair of binoculars for the price. A lot of people might be asking, are binoculars really a tool? In my opinion, they are, and in fact they are something that I get a lot of use out. These are basically always with me. I even take these out when it's dark now if I'm going out for night walks and stuff, because I've found that they're really good for looking at the stars. I was out doing a stargazing workshop earlier this week, and I was able to really zoom in on the Seven Sisters up by Mars in the sky, and I could see it with quite a lot of detail, so that was really cool. These are a 12 by 42 kind of zoom range or whatever, with a multi-coated field 5.4 degrees, whatever that means. They have adjustable eyepieces. You've got a kind of focusing ring, I believe, on the right hand tube, plus you've got your main focusing ring on the middle. Comes with a carrying strap, and it does in fact have, when you unthread this front bit, it has the thread to allow you to put them onto a kind of tripod if you have a binocular mount for a tripod. So these are really good, and I am always carrying them now. So why am I carrying them? Why do I think binoculars are so important? Well, for me, the whole point of Bushcraft is to connect and reconnect and, you know, rewild our minds, to give the Hidden Valley Bushcraft reference. Shout out to Nick Goldsmith over at Hidden Valley Bushcraft, link up here and in the description. Keep doing what you're doing, man, it's great work. But, you know, we're out here, in my opinion, to, you know, connect with nature. And in my opinion, the best way, or one of the best ways to do that, is to have something like a pair of binoculars. Like, just think, how many times have you been out and gone, is that an animal over there? Is that a squirrel running up that tree? Things like that. Binoculars instantly allow you to zoom in and get a better clue of what's going on. And as I've said, they are actually incredibly good for stargazing as well. So that is very nice. So that's about going to do it for this video. That is all of my tools, but I promised you at the start of the video that if you stuck till the end, I would show you around where I am. So let's go ahead and do that. So this is where I've been filming here. This is my new current Bushcraft shelter. I've been working on this with a couple of friends. So this is really nice. We've thatched it with moss here. It's your basic lean-to shelter. We've walled in one end with just kind of a moss curve around the edge, and the other end back here is a kind of vertical wall. We've got this kind of doorway pushing through here. It's quite cool. The tarp's not normally up here. That is simply for filming today. It's been quite wet, and I put that up just to protect the camera in case it rained. As you can see, we've built a nice bench here, bench / bed or whatever, and the shelter has actually been doing its job, because back in here it's bone dry. There you can see all the tools. I've just hung my pack up here as well using a stick toggle. Got my smock there. Coming back over this side, you can just see the shelter. And then looking around this area is really awesome. There's lots of, I've cut some of these down here, but there's lots of dead Scots pine back in there. There's lots of good kind of there's obviously the bracken here. There's birch going about for fire lighting, but there's also lots of branches that have come off the trees. We're in this little kind of Scots pine border. Back in the back there is all like Norway spruce, so it's really dense. So there's lots of good stuff in there as well if we need. This stretches quite a long way. We've got lots of moss. It's a really nice place. There is a path just there. That's kind of the access path. There is a road just back in there, but we are far enough away from it where you can still see it, but you can't hear it. So that is brilliant. We've got this nice big log here as well. This has been the chopping log. As you can see, it's kind of fallen to bits. The edge of it is really quite rotten, but in the middle it's still solid, so it's good for splitting wood and stuff like that and putting points on things. We are going to expand this shelter, probably build another lean-to along there, and then potentially build a roof across the whole front bit. But yeah, it's a really nice place. So that's going to do it for this video, guys. So thank you very much for watching. If you liked it, make sure to hit that like button, and if you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button as well. If you want to see a specific video, leave a comment down below, and until next time, bye for now.